Hi folks, so it's time to choose my TBR pile for May, and as trailed on a couple of other videos, we're going to introduce a bit of jeopardy. We're going to call it Bookshelf Bingo, and you'll see how that's going to work. Right, let the games begin. I'm going to give it a bit of a spin first. Which is a little bit awkward one-handed, to be honest. Well, some balls have come out, so that's exciting already. That is number 26, that's shelf 26. That's the first one. And then we've got shelf 14. And then we have shelf 9. That's one of my vintage shelves. Let's give it a bit more of a spin. Oop. That's an escapee. Oh, never mind, we'll take that one. 27. 35. The higher numbers are on my newer shelves, the shelves with the newer books. 24. 5, that's vintage as well. Number 5 is the shelves with, from sort of Julia May to Andre Norton's, all the M's and the N's. McCaffrey's, Moorcock's, Nivens, that kind of thing. So how many is that? 2, 4, 6, 7. So I'm gonna pick 8. There we go. 19. So that's 8. That would normally be about right for a month, but I'm going to spin a few more shelves out, as it were, to give myself some reserves in case I read more than 8. But also, I'm going to give myself in this process a couple of mulligans each month. So if I choose a shelf and I've read all the books, and then I don't want to waste time rereading a book unless something particularly grabs me that I'd love to reread. Then I'm going to take a mulligan in golfing terms and move on to the next shelf. So 39. What will be next? 55. That's almost, so there are 59 shelves, if I've counted correctly, in my library of various shapes and sizes, some quite small, some quite long. So 55 is towards the scrag end of the library, as it were. 33. So how many is that now? 3, 6, 9. We'll do one more. 53. Let me see. 53. Okay, that's 12, I think. So that will do for narrowing things down a little bit in this first month of Bookshelf Bingo. And I'll take you on a tour of those shelves, and we'll try to pick a book from each one, and then I can take you through the books. All right, see you in a moment. So how are we going to do this then? I think that I will, rather than starting at the lowest numbers, which would bias my vintage shelves, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, just to mix it up a little bit. Right, so first shelf then is 33. So the first thing I have to do is work out which fucking shelf is number 33, because obviously I haven't marked them. I think I know roughly where it is, but bear with while I figure that out. Okay, so shelf 33 is up here, which is a little short shelf, and contains a number of books that I've read before. So I haven't read that. I have read that and all of those. I haven't read that. Read those two. Haven't read that. I have read that. Haven't read that. So there's 3 or 4 that I haven't read there. And I'm immediately drawn to Dave Hutchinson's Sanctuary, which is the 3rd book in this series. I really enjoyed the first 2. So that's my pick from shelf 33. Nice and simple. So shelf 33. That's not the shelf number. It's the number of books on the shelf. Shelf 33 is all my Peter F. Hamilton books, which nearly all of which I've read. So I haven't read A Second Chance at Eden, down here, it's a paperback, and I haven't read Manhattan Reverse, which I think is short stories. But on this shelf is perched on top of the Peter F. Hamilton books my recently acquired Space Opera Renaissance book, and I'm not going to try to read that entire book this month. It's pretty chunky. It's short stories and novellas, so I'm going to have that. I'm going to read the introduction and a few things from it, and then it can go back into the mix for future months for me to tackle again. Excellent. I'm looking forward to that. I'm already enjoying this process. Right, so shelf 5 is next, which is over in my vintage corner. So what have we got here? We've got Will McCarthy, which I think is the second, third or fourth book in a series, so I'm not going to pick that, although I'd quite like to read that. I do have the first one over there. A few Fritz Liebers. Do you know what though? I'm going to accelerate the process of deciding whether or not I'm going to keep all of these Anne McCaffrey books or if they're going to go, because they're taking up a lot of space, and either they're going to be great and I'm going to want to keep them, or they're going to be so-so and I'll be happy to get rid of them. So what I said I would do is read the second book of the original Chronicles of Pern. I think that's the right one. Dragon Quest. Yeah, that's it. So that's book 2 of the original trilogy. Let's see what's next. So we've done 33, 19 and 5, so it's 35 next. Okay, I think I know where that is. So this is shelf 35, most of which I've read. So I've read the Leckies, I've read the Nine Fox Gambit trilogy, and I've read the 3 Body Bomb trilogy. So there's a book of Cixin Liu's, which I'm sure is badly pronounced, short stories, Wandering Earth, or I've got Yoon-Ha Lee, which is short stories from the same universe as these guys. So I think I'm going to go with Hex Arcade Stories and see how I get on with that. Interesting. I think it's good because I don't think I would have glossed over that one if I was doing a general search, a general shelf survey to pick a TBR pile for a month. I don't think I would ever pick that. So already it's proving fruitful. Whether it's any good or not, only time will tell, but still I'm enjoying the process. Now then, this is shelf 53, which is the next one. I have read all of the Donaldsons. Actually, I've read the first 3.5 of the Donaldson books, the Gap Cycle, but I haven't finished it. I recently reread the first one and quite enjoyed it. So that's a possible. I could go on to the next one there. Mordant Sneed I've read and enjoyed immensely. Don't really need to rush into that. And then the rest of this shelf is Ken MacLeod's. So let's see. I think I'm going to go with Newton's Wake, actually, which is a standalone space opera, I believe, at Singleton. Awesome. It's a little bit, my movement's a little bit restricted here, so let's see how I go on. So this is shelf 9, which is mostly vintage or at least A format books. So I already spotted a possible. I'd quite like to read Marrow. I've had lots of people have recommended that to me. I'd quite like to read Unto Leviathan as well, though. Most of this shelf I haven't read, so I could almost close my eyes and pick one and it would be good. It's Bob Shaw, it's Clifford Simak, most of which I haven't read, and then it's Silverberg, most of which I haven't read. So there's an embarrassment of riches on this shelf. I'm currently reading that on audiobook and it's excellent. Really enjoying it. So what to pick? Well, I have already got Clifford Simak on the tail end of my April TBR if I can fit it in. So maybe I won't go with the Simak. I'm actually going to go with Robert Reed's Marrow. Plenty of people have recommended it to me. So this lad here is shelf 24. You can ignore that number. It was about the number of books. So let us see. So there's a few Jack Vance on here. The Lyonesse trilogy, which I'm not sure I'm ready for because it's really fantasy, I think. But I could do a Joe Haldeman. I've read The Forever War. I haven't read the 2 that follow. That is the sequel, which I have read years and years ago, to The Legacy of Hero, which I really liked. But I think I'm going to pick the slenderest book, Mindbridge by Joe Haldeman. Right, let us see what is next. So we just did shelf 24, so 39 is next, okay. So this is shelf 39, another small one. So I have read Seven Eves and I have read Anathem a number of times each. So what else have we got here? A few Brian Aldiss. The Tuplov Too Far is short stories. Ruins is not actually science fiction, I discovered after I bought it. Blade Runner 2, I've read the other 3. So I think I'm going to pick the Blade Runner book by K.W. Jeter. Okay, so we just did 39. 55 is next. So this is 55. This might present a problem. I'd like to read these, but it would mean reading them out of order. I'm missing Raft. I think they can be read standalone, but I think I would probably prefer to read them in order. So that's a possibility. It's not really science fiction. It's a vampire story. I've read the Earthsea books. I haven't read that one. That's a later addition to the series. I don't really fancy these late era Arthur C. Clarke's. And then you just got the Mars books, which I've read many times, and then Limit, which I haven't read, but that's enormous, and I've already got several fat books. So I think that leaves Maybe a little more. I'll tell you what, I shall read that. So what's next? There's 3 shelves left, I think. 26 and 27. That's interesting. Okay. This might be where I take a mulligan, because there's only got 5 books in it. I've read those 4, and I don't think I fancy Cloud Atlas. So yeah, I'm going to give myself a free hit on this shelf. And the next one was 27, which is these lads. Now this is interesting. So I have read Great North Road, quite enjoyed it. I haven't read these 2 Hamiltons actually, so that's a possibility. But also a possibility, and I should make a move here, I think. So these are the Galactic Centre. Well, that's short stories, but the other books are the Galactic Centre books by Greg Benford. So I think I'm going to crack that open. In the Ocean of Night, which is the first one. So that's a US first edition, not in super condition to be honest, but still. Right, so this is shelf 14. Much of which but not all of which I've read. So I've read those, haven't read that, have that, not those, or that, have read that, read those 2. So I could continue on with the Southern Reach books, or I could continue on with the Becky Chambers, which I have quite enjoyed, or I could hit a John Scalzi book. I've wanted to read this for ages actually, a bit of a sort of airport thriller, meant to be very, very good. So let's do that, I'm going to have that. Okay, so the books that I chose, a closer look at those. First was Dave Hutchison Sanctuary, which is the 3rd of 4 in the Aftermath series, which he is co-writing with Adam Roberts, co-writing in that they're alternating. So Dave Hutchison did book 1, Roberts did book 2, and Hutchison's done book 3, and presumably there'll be another from Adam Roberts at some point. I really enjoyed the first 2, helped greatly by the fact that it's set very locally to me, so all the places are very familiar to me, and it's fun to imagine them in a post-apocalyptic setting 100 years after some comet fragments strike the Earth and wipe out most of the population. So let's see. After the war in the parish, with a capital P, Adam is looking forward to a period of peace, but his superiors have other ideas. There are rumours from Oxford and the Cotswolds that Father John, who once almost overthrew Plymouth, is building an army, and someone has to go and investigate. Arriving in Oxford, Adam is surprised to find a thriving city with a healthy populace and technology not seen since before the fall of the Sisters, which are the comet fragments. He also finds it patrolled by the descendants of the Thames Valley Police, that's our local police force, among them Detective Inspector Leonie Mello. However, it doesn't take long for dark events to concern Adam. Murders, paint splashed graffiti on the walls, people going missing, and he can't help but wonder if the past is following him. I like the character Adam. He was in the first book, he wasn't in the second, or only peripherally, and so I'm looking forward to getting back to that. It's a substantially longer book than the others. It's over 400 pages, but I flew through the others, so I'm sure I'll get through this pretty quick too. Now, I'm not totally sure of the order in which these arrived as I went through the shelves, but it doesn't really matter, we're going to get through them all. Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Quest, which is the second of the original Dragon Riders of Pern trilogy. I surprised myself by how much I enjoyed the first book. I wasn't really expecting to. I read it feeling like it was a bit of a chore, but actually I quite enjoyed it. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure. It was a little bit cheesy, and a little bit soft focus at times from a romance point of view, but I didn't wholly object to that, and I found the story quite interesting, I suppose. Is it earth-shattering and thought-provoking idea book? No, not really, but it's still pretty much. Anyway, so here we go. Another turn, and the deadly silver threads began falling again. So the bold dragon riders took to the skies, and their magnificent flying dragons swirled and swooped in space. Well, not space, presumably, in the atmosphere, belching flames that destroyed the shimmering strands before they reached the ground. But Falar knew that he had to find a better way to protect the peoples and lands of Pern, and he had to find it before the rebellious old-timers could breed any more dissent, before his brother Fanar would be foolhardy enough to launch another suicide mission, and before the mercurial fire lizards could cause even more trouble. All right, so as I've said a number of times, Anne McCaffrey's sort of on notice. I've got quite a lot of shelf space taken up with Anne McCaffrey books, and they need to earn their place. So if books 2 and 3 of this first trilogy leave me a little bit cold, then the rest of them can go. Harsh but fair. Okay, the next book is Yunhar Lee, which is a book, so Hexarchate Stories. So that's the short stories set in the same universe as Nine Fox Gambit and the 2 that followed it. I quite enjoyed those. I mean, I couldn't tell you much of what happened now because it's some years since I read them. But the first one was quite difficult to get into. But once you sort of got your eye in, I found it was pretty good, interesting, quite different in its approach. So this is, I think, short stories, and I don't know how many there are. Oh, quite a lot. So some of them are short stories, a few pages. Looks like there's a couple of long-ish ones, and then 15 or 20 of the sort of 5 to 10 page variety, so properly short stories. So nice. So I should whip through that fairly quickly then. And then I'm wading my way through my Ken MacLeod collection. So this is Newton's Wake, which is a singleton space opera, and apparently he's the modern day George Orwell, according to someone. So let's see. The hard rapture took Earth's best minds away. Now the rest are about to find out where they went. Centuries ago, space settlers and soldiers fled to the stars from the sentient AI war machines that engulfed Earth. They colonized Eurydice, a planet whose rocks contain traces of its own war machine, some of which still guard a vast, enigmatic artifact on a remote tundra. When an expedition raids this strange artifact, the Eurydiceans discover that they weren't the last survivors of humanity after all. Their leisured lifestyle is about to be disrupted by new arrivals for whom Eurydice is a prize worth fighting over, and the long dormant war machines are awakening. Newton's Wake is a stunning standalone space opera charting the struggle for human survival in a universe dominated by post-human intelligence. And that is from 2004, so 20 odd years ago. I do like a bit of space opera, and I like Ken MacLeod, so that is an intersection set I'm happy to tuck into. Then we've got Robert Reed Marrow, which is one of the great ship books, so that is a spaceship. I'm led to believe. The ship is home to 1,000 alien races and a near immortal crew who have no knowledge of its origins or purpose, and at its core lies a secret as ancient as the universe. It's about to be unleashed. So more than that, I do not know. What do we got here? Okay, Joe Haldeman, Mindbridge. Dazzling epic of the far future from the author of The Forever War. So when sensors detect the presence of alien intelligence in the region of the star Arcanar, a team of tamers is sent to investigate. They are never seen again. Another small team, the elite of the Tamer Agency, is ordered out, primed with every defensive and offensive weapon the technology of Earth can devise. What they find looks harmless enough at first, but develops into the most hideous confrontation mankind will ever have to endure. So that sounds like a sort of bangy, shooty, sort of first contact type thing. And its opening line is Denver pissed him off. And I think that's Denver, the city in Colorado, not Denver, a person. The next one up is a recent acquisition. My daughter bought it for me for my birthday, which is the Space Opera Renaissance, which is partly a scholarly work of history and partly showcasing space opera in the form of short stories and novellas from across the ages, from the original pomp of space opera in the 20s and 30s up to more recent times. And this was published in the 90s or perhaps in the early 2000s. So, 2006. So I won't attempt to read all of it because it's pretty dense. But what I will do is read the introduction, which amusingly is titled How Shit Became Shinola, the definition and redefinition of space opera, which has the subtitles of Space Opera is Tripe, Space Opera is Dead, Everything You Know Is Wrong, The New Space Opera Waves, and then it goes on. And then so there's some, and then the rest of the material is kind of short biographical details of the author, and then, like I say, either a short story or a novella from that author. It looks really good. So I'm really happy to be reading that. I won't read all of it unless I get sucked in and I can't help myself. But my intention is to read 100 or 200 pages of it and then put it back, and I'll dig into it again at some other time. So next is K.W. Jeter's Blade Runner 2. K.W. Jeter is a well-acclaimed author, sort of a protege of Philip K. Dick, I believe, and I haven't read anything by him at all. I've got 2 or 3 of his books on my shelves now. A friend saw this on a shelf and asked me if I wanted it, and I said yes, so they sent it to me. It is the official sequel, the authorised sequel to Blade Runner, and it's called The Edge of Human. Set in a futuristic urban jungle, Ridley Scott's vision of Philip K. Dick's 21st century Los Angeles Blade Runner was a masterpiece. K.W. Jeter's novel The Edge of Human returns to the world of Blade Runner Rick Deckard with a sequel of haunting power and suspense. Deckard has fled Los Angeles with Rachel, his beautiful replicant lover. Rachel, like all her kind, has a built-in lifespan of 4 years. In a rural hideaway, they ration their days together, and Deckard spends months just watching Rachel sleep in cryogenic suspension. They think themselves safe from the Tyrell Corporation, who want every replicant dead, until Deckard is snatched from this haven. Back in the decaying labyrinthine sprawl of LA, Deckard's Blade Runner skills keep him alive, but always one step behind his mysterious abductors. A visit to his old boss only sinks him deeper into the mire of lies and confusion. Who is the mysterious sixth replicant everyone now wants dead? Why is he facing a murder rap for taking out Pris, one of the original 5? And why is ex-Blade Runner Dave Holden still stalking his every move? Should he trust Sarah Tyrrell, who now leads her uncle's corporation, just because she's the living and breathing image of his beloved Rachel? The Edge of Human adds a new dimension to one of the most enduring SF stories, recreating the dark, brooding intensity and relentless suspense of the original. So it's interesting to read that. I wasn't sure if this was the source material for the movie sequel, Blade Runner 2049. It doesn't sound like it is at all, because that was set, many years after the first movie was set, and this sounds like a much more direct sequel. It's a different beast. Then I should be going back to the world of Earthsea. So this is a book I didn't know existed until recently. So I came across this in charity shop. It's called The Other Wind, and it's billed as the new Earthsea novel. It was published in 2002. I didn't even know Ursula Le Guin was still alive then. Is she still alive now? Maybe she is, I don't know. So the sorcerer Alder fears sleep. He dreams of the land of the dead, and he dreams of his wife who died young and wants so much to return to him that she kissed him across the low stone wall that separates our world from the dry land, where the grass is withered, the stars never move, and lovers pass without knowing each other. Every night the dead pull Alder to them, and through him they are seeking to free themselves and invade Earthsea. Sounds like a zombie apocalypse pending there. In desperation, Alder turns to Sparrowhawk, the former archmage who brought the king home from the realm of death and then flew off on a dragon's back. Alder is told to go to Havnor to seek out Tenar, Tahanu and the young king Lebanon. And from there, Alder, with these three and the amber-eyed Irian, a fierce dragon able to take shape of a woman, journey to the imminent grove on Roke, for the incursion of the dead is not the only danger threatening Earthsea. The dragons are back. And after centuries of peace, they come to claim what they believe is rightfully theirs. So, I don't know. So I read Earthsea a couple of years ago, and I quite enjoyed it. Obviously, the writing is great. It is fantasy of an almost kind of YA tone, but worth my time, obviously. And I need to read more Le Guin. I suppose if I had my choice, I would probably have chosen something else, but that was what came up on Bookshelf Bingo, so that is what must be read. Then I'm going to, if I have time, I'm going to hit up Gregory Benford's In the Ocean of Night, which is the first of the Galactic Centre books, which this was published in the late 70s, I think. One of his earliest books. Can't find the 1970... So I think it was... it's a little bit of a fix-up. So parts of it were published as short stories in various magazines and what have you, and the book was published, I don't know when, in the late 70s. It's not clear. So let's see. In the closing years of this century, a new comet is discovered. The computations of its orbit indicate that it will approach Earth. But unlike other comets, Icarus is a solid body, and its impact would cause a disaster worse than any fusion bomb could create. Astronaut Nigel Walmsley, who I hear is a pretty good anti-hero, so we'll see, is sent out to intercept and vaporise Icarus, but what he finds beneath its barren surface moves him to defy orders and risk the destruction of most of the world's civilization, as you do. Nigel's mutiny and the worldwide panic it raised should have destroyed his career, but as the century turned, then moved into his second decade, he kept a foothold in the space programme, insulating himself from the steady erosion of the quality of life on this planet with his work and his prickly but rich relationships with two very different women. Lucky chap. Two events tore the installation away: an alien spacecraft looping inward from the solar system and signalling intelligently, and the sentence of death the Doctor pronounced on his beloved Alexandria, poisoned by what the world's air had become. For Nigel, the only sense, sanity and hope left was in approaching the spacecraft and what it might mean, and then the authorities give him the mission of destroying it. The adventures and discoveries in this novel are in the finest traditions of modern science fiction, but the story is enriched by the equally gripping development of Nigel as a man who finds he must seek something others cannot conceive of, whose true home is in the limitless ocean of night between the stars. So it's hard science fiction, it's a little bit space opera-esque, and Nigel Walmsley is, I think, not a terribly likeable character, at least to start with. So last on my list, but not necessarily the last one that I read in the month, I'll choose them at random really as I go, based on what I fancy at the time, is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I've heard very good things about. It's a sort of science fiction airport thriller, if you will. That's how I would think of it anyway. Are you happy in your life? These are the last words Jason Desson hears before the masked abductor knocks him unconscious. Before he awakes to find himself strapped to a gurney, surrounded by strangers in hazmat suits. Before the man he's never met smiles down at him and says, "Welcome back." In this world he's woken up too. Jason's life is not the one that he knows. His wife is not his wife. His son was never born, and Jason is not an ordinary college physics professor. Is it this world or the other that's the dream? And the answer lies in a journey more wondrous and horrifying than Jason could have imagined. The most helter-skelter race to the finish line thriller that you'll read all year. So I don't know, is that like a parallel universe type thing? Sounds like it might be. So we'll see. Will I become a crouch potato, which I believe is what his fans are known as? We shall see. So that's everything on my pile for this month. Hopefully that was more interesting than my usual dithering in front of shelves. I'm going to continue with that for the time being. We'll see how it goes. If you, like me, enjoy a good space opera, then I have a bunch of videos that will give you more book recommendations than you can shake a stick at, and you can watch that here. Thank you, as always, for watching. Until next time, goodbye for now.